The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Starfleet had charted thousands of star systems, catalogued millions of species, and documented phenomena that defied imagination. But what happens when something appears that challenges not just science, but the very foundation of what humanity believes itself to be? What happens when evolution doesn't wait for social progress to catch up? The USS Enterprise D was conducting a routine stellar cartography mission in Sector 221G when the universe decided routine was over. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive subspace distortion forming at bearing 27 Mark IV. Lieutenant Commander Data announced from his operations console, his golden eyes reflecting the sudden cascade of alerts across his panel. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our database." Captain Jean-Luc Picard rose from his command chair, tugging his uniform tunic down in a gesture that had become second nature. On screen. The view screen shimmered, revealing a writhing tear in space itself. Violet and crimson energy cascaded from the rupture like a wound in reality bleeding light. The bridge lighting flickered as the phenomenon's radiation washed over the Enterprise's shields. "Shields holding," Worf reported from tactical, his Klingon instincts already on high alert. "But the energy readings are increasing exponentially. It's a subspace rupture," Data continued, his fingers dancing across his console with superhuman precision. "But the dimensional variance is extraordinary. Captain, I am detecting what appears to be a transporter signature, but the pattern is fragmenting across multiple coordinates." "Multiple coordinates?" Picard's eyes narrowed. "Explain." 7 distinct humanoid patterns, sir. They are being scattered across Federation space. 1 rematerializing on our ship, 2 on Starbase 219, 1 on the Klingon border, and 3 on various Federation worlds." Data paused, and something almost like confusion crossed his android features. "Captain, the biological readings are impossible." Before Picard could respond, the ship lurched violently. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. The lights cut out, replaced by emergency crimson. "Report!" Picard gripped his chair as the Enterprise shuddered. "The rupture is collapsing," Data said. "But not before depositing one of the signatures directly into Transporter Room 3. Picard tapped his comm badge. "Security to Transporter Room 3. Medical team standing by." He looked to his first officer. "Number 1, you're with me." Commander William Riker was already moving toward the turbolift, his hand instinctively near his phaser. As they descended through the ship, Picard's mind raced through possibilities. Transporter accidents were rare but documented. Dimensional travelers were unusual but not unprecedented. But Data's use of the word impossible troubled him deeply. The android didn't exaggerate. The turbolift doors opened to reveal Transporter Room 3 in chaos. Security officers had their phasers drawn, aimed at the transporter pad where a figure knelt, head bowed, strange energy still crackling around him. The transporter chief stood frozen at his console, staring at readings that made no sense. "Hold your fire," Picard commanded, stepping forward with deliberate calm. The figure on the pad slowly raised his head. He was a man, human in appearance, with brown hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He wore unusual clothing, a black jacket over a collared shirt, and most strikingly, a strange metallic wheelchair that seemed to hover slightly above the pad's surface. But it was his eyes that caught Picard's attention. They held an intelligence and depth that reminded the captain of his own reflection. The weight of leadership, of terrible choices made for the greater good. "Please," the man said, his voice cultured and calm despite his situation. "I mean no harm. My name is Charles Xavier, and I desperately need your help." Picard held up a hand, staying his security team. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. You are in Federation space, Mr. Xavier. How did you come to be here?" Xavier's wheelchair moved forward. Picard noted there was no visible propulsion system, and the professor's expression grew grave. "I'm afraid the answer to that question is complicated. My team and I were investigating an anomaly in our own reality. Something went catastrophically wrong. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Captain, I can sense you are a man of principle and reason. I'm also aware that you're deeply troubled by what your sensors are telling you about my physiology. Picard's eyes flickered to Data, who had arrived and was scanning Xavier with a tricorder. The android's expression was as close to shocked as his programming allowed. Captain, Data said quietly, this man's genetic structure contains sequences that should not exist in human DNA. Deliberate alterations at the molecular level affecting neurological function, vastly enhanced brain capacity, and structures in the cerebral cortex that appear to generate a form of electrochemical energy I cannot classify. I am not genetically engineered, Xavier said quickly, sensing the sudden tension in the room. Every phaser had shifted slightly, targeting solutions recalculating. I am what my people call a mutant, a natural evolutionary development of the human genome. As are my 6 teammates, currently scattered across your space. The word hung in the air like a weapon primed to fire. Picard's mind immediately went to Earth's darkest chapter. The eugenics wars of the 1990s, when genetically enhanced humans like Khan Noonien Singh had nearly destroyed civilization. The Federation's absolute prohibition on genetic engineering had been born in the ashes of that conflict. Natural evolution does not produce changes of this magnitude in a single generation, Picard said carefully. Our records of human genetic development are incomplete, Xavier interrupted gently. Captain, I realize how this appears. But I assure you, mutation has been part of human evolution for millennia. In our time, our reality, we are simply becoming more common, more visible. His eyes grew distant, and more feared. Sir, Worf interjected, his tactical mind already working through threat scenarios. If there are 6 more like him scattered across Federation space, each with unknown capabilities, I can help you locate them, Xavier offered. I'm a telepath, Captain. I can sense my students across vast distances. But I'll need your cooperation, and I'll need you to understand something crucial. He met Picard's gaze directly. My X-Men are not weapons. They are people, young people, most of them, who have spent their lives being hunted, feared, and forced to hide what they are. They will be terrified, disoriented, and potentially dangerous if they perceive a threat. Picard studied the man before him. Decades of command had honed his ability to read people, and everything about Charles Xavier spoke of sincerity. But sincerity didn't erase danger. Khan had been sincere too, in his belief that superior genetics gave him the right to rule. Mr. Data, escort Professor Xavier to quarters, under guard. Make him comfortable, but establish level 5 security protocols. Picard turned back to Xavier. You'll forgive the precaution. I understand completely, Xavier said. Though I should warn you, if you want to find my X-Men before someone else does, we should move quickly. One of them is a woman who can control the weather. Another is virtually indestructible with a healing factor that makes him extraordinarily difficult to kill. And one. Xavier's expression darkened. One is a young woman with more power than any being should possess, and very little control over it. Picard felt the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders. Then we'd better begin. As Xavier was escorted away, Picard turned to Riker. Number 1, contact Starfleet Command. Inform them we've encountered human variants with abilities that may require careful consideration. And have Counselor Troi meet with our guest. I want to know if we can trust him. Aye, sir, Riker said. But his expression mirrored Picard's concern. Outside the Enterprise's windows, stars shone with their usual indifference. But somewhere out there, 6 individuals with the power to reshape worlds were waking up in a universe that had no idea what to do with them. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The Federation's carefully constructed vision of humanity's evolution was about to face its greatest test. And this time, the threat came from within the human family itself. Counselor Deanna Troi sat across from Charles Xavier in the guest quarters that had become his temporary cell. The room was comfortable. Starfleet didn't believe in punitive confinement for unknowns, but the two security officers outside the door and the force field ready to activate at a moment's notice made the situation clear. "You're conflicted," Xavier said before Troi could speak. "I can sense it. The empath in you recognizes truth, but your duty demands skepticism." Troy's Bethesda heritage gave her an edge most counselors lacked. She could sense emotions, read the currents of feeling that words often concealed. But sitting across from Xavier felt like standing before a mirror. His mind was vast, controlled, and utterly sincere in its compassion. It also terrified her. "Professor," she said carefully, "in my experience, those with power over minds are either saints or tyrants. The distinction often comes down to a single moment of weakness." Xavier smiled sadly. "You're absolutely right to be cautious. I've spent my life teaching young mutants that our gifts are not licenses for dominance. But I've also seen what happens when fear turns gifted people into monsters." He gestured to his legs. "I cannot walk, counselor. A human did this to me, a human who hated what I represented. Yet I've dedicated my life to building bridges between humans and mutants, because the alternative is extinction for one side or the other." Troi felt the weight of old pain, layers of sacrifice and loss, and beneath it all an unshakable conviction that coexistence was possible. "I believe you," she said. "But belief doesn't address Starfleet's concerns. Your genetic profile suggests capabilities that violate every treaty the Federation has signed since the eugenics wars." "I've heard that term twice now," Xavier said. "These eugenics wars, when did they occur?" "The 1990s, Troi replied. "Genetically engineered humans attempted to seize control of Earth. It took decades to recover from the devastation." Xavier's expression shifted to something approaching horror. 1990s? But that's... He stopped himself, understanding dawning. "We're not in our reality, are we? This is a parallel universe, one where human history diverged from our own." Before Troi could respond, the ship's red alert klaxons screamed to life. On the bridge, Picard stood watching the viewscreen as two Romulan warbirds decloaked off the Enterprise's port bow. Their weapons were powered but not locked, a statement of capability, not immediate intent. "They're hailing us, sir," Worf announced, barely concealing his distaste for the Romulans. On screen, the viewscreen shimmered, revealing Commander Torith of the Romulan Star Empire. Her expression was cold calculation wrapped in courteous threat. "Captain Picard? We detected the subspace anomaly and its cargo. We have reason to believe you are harboring biological weapons of extreme danger." Picard kept his face neutral. The Romulans had sensor networks along the neutral zone that could detect a whisper across light years. They would have seen the energy signatures, analyzed the transporter's patterns, drawn their own conclusions. "Commander Torith, the individuals who arrived via the anomaly are not weapons. They are displaced persons seeking to return home. Displaced persons who register as genetically enhanced humans?" Torith's smile was a knife wrapped in silk. "How convenient that they arrived on your flagship, Captain. The Tal Shiar has analyzed the energy signatures. Each individual possesses capabilities that could level cities. One of them manipulates weather systems. Imagine that power unleashed on a planetary scale. Another appears to be indestructible." Data turned from his console. "Captain, I am detecting 4 more signatures decloaking. Romulan pattern, but one is different. Cardassian." The viewscreen split to show the new arrivals. 3 more warbids, and a Cardassian Galar-class vessel. The Cardassians and Romulans barely tolerated each other, which meant something had driven them to cooperate. Fear. "This is Gul Haver of the Cardassian Union." A new voice cut in, the Cardassian's face appearing alongside Toritha's. "The Federation's history with genetic augmentation is well documented. Khan Nunnian Singh, the augment embryos, your constant violations of your own principles in the name of progress. Now 7 enhanced weapons appear conveniently in your space, and you expect the galaxy to simply trust your intentions? Picard felt the trap closing. If he handed over the X-Men, he'd be condemning them to dissection or enslavement. If he protected them, he'd confirm every suspicion that the Federation was weaponizing enhanced humans. The individuals in question are under Federation protection pending investigation, Picard said firmly. Neither the Romulan Empire nor the Cardassian Union has jurisdiction. Then perhaps the Klingon Empire does, a third voice interrupted. A Klingon bird of prey decloaked, smaller than the other vessels but no less threatening. General Clagg's scarred face filled another portion of the view screen. We detected one of your displaced persons on the Klingon border station corvette, Clag growled. A human male with metal claws that emerged from his hands, a healing factor that allowed him to survive exposure to vacuum for 17 seconds, and a warrior's spirit that killed 4 of my men before we subdued him. There was something like respect in the Klingon's voice. He fights with honor. This one, at least, deserves better than Federation bureaucracy. You want to conscript him, Picard said flatly. I want to offer him a choice the Federation will not, to be what he is without shame. Clag leaned forward. Your Starfleet fears warriors, Picard. You dress soldiers in scientific robes and pretend exploration absolves you of violence. This Logan, he knows what he is. A predator. A killer. He would have a place among Klingon. Picard's comm badge chirped. Bridge, this is sickbay. We have a situation. Go ahead, Doctor, Picard said, not taking his eyes from the screen. Dr. Beverly Crusher's voice was tight with controlled alarm. Captain, I need you in sickbay immediately. It's about the genetic data from Professor Xavier. What we've found. Jean-Luc, this changes everything. In sickbay, Crusher stood before a holographic display of genetic sequences that looked like art, and science had merged into something transcendent. Data stood beside her, his expression as close to wonder as his programming allowed. Explain, Picard said as he entered, Riker close behind. These mutations aren't random, Crusher said. They're elegant. Purposeful. Each X gene, that's what Xavier calls it, activates in response to environmental stress or specific developmental triggers. It's not engineering, Captain. It's evolution accelerated by factors we don't fully understand. Data gestured to a rotating double helix on the display. More significantly, Captain, I have cross-referenced these genetic markers with historical human DNA samples from Earth's database. Trace elements of the X gene have existed in human populations for at least 5,000 years. Picard stared at the data. You're saying mutants have always existed? In dormant or minimal expression, yes. Data confirmed. But in Xavier's timeline, something triggered widespread activation. Environmental factors, cosmic radiation, or possibly quantum variance in their reality's physical laws. In our universe, the X gene remains largely dormant. Largely? Riker asked. Crusher pulled up another file. I've been reviewing genetic databases. There are 17 documented cases in the past century of humans born with inexplicable abilities. They were classified as genetic anomalies, medical curiosities. We never connected them because they were so rare. She looked at Picard. But if Xavier's right, if mutation is natural evolution, then the Federation's laws against genetic enhancement don't apply. They're not augments. They're the next step. The implications crashed over Picard like a wave. The Federation had built its identity partially on the rejection of genetic superiority. The lessons of Khan, the regulations, the careful monitoring, all predicated on the belief that genetic enhancement led to tyranny. But what if it wasn't enhancement? What if it was simply evolution? Captain, Worf's voice came through the comm batch. The Romulans are demanding a response. And sir, we're detecting 7 more vessels approaching. Word is spreading. Picard closed his eyes briefly. The X-Men had been in this universe for less than 4 hours, and already they'd become the focal point of an interstellar incident. Mr. Data, locate the other X-Men. prepared to retrieve them before someone else does. He tapped his comm badge. Picard to Xavier. Professor, I need to know everything about your team's capabilities. And I need to know it now. In his quarters, Xavier's voice came back calm but urgent. Captain, there's something you should know. One of my X-Men, Jean Grey, is experiencing severe distress. I can feel her mind from here. She's on a Federation colony world, and her powers are destabilizing. If she loses control. What happens if she loses control? Picard demanded. Xavier's silence lasted 3 seconds too long. Captain, in our reality, Jean is host to a cosmic force called the Phoenix. It's usually dormant, controlled. But your universe's subspace physics seem to be agitating it. If it awakens fully, it could consume the entire star system. Outside the Enterprise, 7 more ships dropped out of warp. The standoff was becoming an arena. And somewhere on a colony world, a young woman with red hair clutched her head as fire began to dance across her skin. The colony of New Providence was a modest Federation settlement. 12,000 souls spread across a temperate world that reminded homesick humans of Earth's Mediterranean coast. It was the kind of place where children played in the streets and farmers still worked the soil by choice rather than necessity, where replicators supplemented rather than replaced the simple pleasure of growing things. Jean Grey materialized in the central plaza at 0847 hours local time. She stumbled, disoriented, her red hair wild around her face. The last thing she remembered was the Shi'ar gateway collapsing, reality fragmenting around her, and then, where am I? The thought wasn't hers alone. It echoed outward, a telepathic pulse that made every person within 50 meters grab their heads in sudden confusion. Jean gasped, slamming her mental shields up, but they felt wrong here, like trying to build a wall with unfamiliar tools. Miss? Are you all right? A woman approached, concerned, reaching out to help. Jean stumbled backward. Don't touch me. I'm not. I don't know where I am. The woman tapped a device on her chest, some kind of communication badge. This is Administrator Chen to Colony Security. We have a disoriented individual in the plaza. Possible medical emergency. Medical emergency. The words triggered something in Jean's memory. People in uniforms, official responses, and then the fear when they realized what she could do. How many times had she seen that progression? Concern turning to fear, turning to violence? No. Not again. But this universe was different. She could feel it in the air, in the way subspace pressed against her consciousness like a weight she'd never felt before. And deeper, far deeper, something else stirred. The Phoenix. It had been dormant for months, a sleeping giant in the corners of her soul. But here, in this place where reality bent differently, it was waking up. No, Jean whispered, backing away as golden light began to flicker across her hands. Not here. Not now. 3 security officers materialized in transporter shimmer, the first time Jean had seen the technology, though she didn't recognize it as such. They wore strange uniforms, carried unfamiliar weapons that hummed with energy. Miss, please remain calm, the lead officer said, his voice professionally soothing. We're here to help. Can you tell us your name? Jean. Jean Grey. Her voice shook. Please, you need to evacuate this area. I can't control. The Phoenix force surged, and Jean's eyes flashed gold. Every piece of glass in the plaza shattered simultaneously. The security officers' tricorders exploded in their hands. And in the sky above, storm clouds began to form with impossible speed. Jean! Xavier's mental voice cut through her panic like a lifeline. Even across the vast distance, through the strange distortions of this universe, he found her. Professor! Jean's mental cry was desperate. I can't hold it. The Phoenix is too strong here. Everything feels wrong. I know, child. I know. Listen to me, the Enterprise is coming for you. Captain Picard is a good man. Trust him. But Jean, you must hold on. If the Phoenix emerges fully in this universe, I don't know what will happen. Jean tried to respond, but the Phoenix was screaming now, demanding release, feeding on the exotic energies of subspace like a starving thing finding feast. The lead security officer, braver or more foolish than his companions, stepped closer. "Miss Gray, my name is Lieutenant Markov. Whatever you're experiencing, our medical facilities can help. Please let us." "You can't help me." Jean's voice echoed with dual tones, human and something far older. Fire erupted around her, not burning but dancing, alive with terrible beauty. "No one can help me. I'm a monster. I've always been a monster." The words came from a deep well of self-hatred, years of being told she was dangerous, years of watching people flinch when she entered a room, years of Scott holding her at night while she wept over the lives her power had cost. "You are not a monster." The new voice in her mind was different from Xavier's, male, authoritative, but carrying an undercurrent of profound empathy. Jean's head snapped up. In the air above the plaza, a starship shimmered into view. It was massive, graceful, its saucer section and nacelles unlike anything from her universe. A name was emblazoned on its hull, Enterprise. "My name is Captain Jean-Luc Picard," the voice continued, and Jean realized with shock that he wasn't telepathic. Somehow her powers were picking up his thoughts unbidden, her shields compromised by her emotional state. "I have spoken with Professor Xavier. I understand you are frightened and far from home. But I give you my word, you are safe here." "Safe?" Jean laughed, and it came out broken. "Look at me. Look at what I am." The Phoenix Force blazed brighter, and the ground beneath her feet began to crack. Colonists were fleeing now, parents grabbing children, the orderly Federation settlement descending into chaos. "I am looking," Picard's thoughts came back, steady as stone. "I see a young woman in terrible pain, struggling to control forces that terrify her. I see someone who has been feared for so long that she has begun to fear herself. And I see someone who, despite all that, is still fighting to protect the people around her." Jean blinked, tears evaporating in the heat of the Phoenix. "You don't know what I can do." "Then show me," Picard thought, and his mental voice held no fear. "Show me who you truly are, Jean Grey. Not the monster you fear you might become, the person you choose to be." For a heartbeat, Jean stood on a knife's edge. The Phoenix roared for release, for the chance to burn and soar and consume. Every instinct screamed at her to let go, to stop fighting, to finally surrender to the power that had haunted her since childhood. But Picard's words echoed Xavier's lessons: "You are not your power. You are what you choose to do with it." Jean closed her eyes. Breathed. Reached deep into herself and found the core of who she was beneath the fear and the fire. A telepath who healed minds. A woman who loved fiercely. A teacher who had helped other young mutants find their way. "I am Jean Grey," she thought, and this time her mental voice was her own. "And I choose control." The Phoenix screamed in frustration, but Jean was stronger. She always had been, she'd just forgotten. The golden light flickered, dimmed, retreated to the depths of her soul where it belonged. The cracks in the ground stopped spreading. The storm clouds above began to dissipate. And Jean collapsed to her knees, exhausted but whole. The Enterprise's transporter beam caught her a moment later, whisking her away from the terrified colonists and their shattered plaza. She materialized in a clean, bright room where a red-haired woman in a blue uniform waited with a medical scanner and a kind smile. "Welcome aboard the Enterprise, Miss Gray," Dr. Crusher said gently. "I'm Dr. Beverly Crusher. You're safe now." Jean looked up at her with eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. "Am I? Or did I just bring danger to your doorstep?" Before Crusher could answer, the ship shuddered. Red alert klaxons wailed. On the bridge, Worf's voice was grim. "Captain, the Romulan flagship is powering weapons. They're demanding we surrender the mutant immediately or they will fire." Picard stood, tugging his uniform. "Mr. Worf, shields up. Ready photon torpedoes but do not lock weapons. Open a channel to all vessels." The view screen split into a dozen sections, Romulans, Cardassians, Klingon, and now 3 Ferengi vessels that had arrived hoping to profit from whatever chaos ensued. Every captain, every commander, every ambitious officer looking to claim the X-Men for their own purposes. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. The individuals who arrived in our space are under Federation protection. They are not weapons. They are not commodities. They are sentient beings with rights under Federation law, and I will defend those rights against anyone who threatens them. Commander Tortha's laugh was bitter. Noble words, Picard. But words won't stop what's coming. Our sensors detected another energy surge from your ship. That girl nearly destroyed a colony. What happens when she does it again? What happens when all 7 of them decide your precious Federation is the enemy? Then we will deal with it as we deal with all threats. Through dialogue, understanding, and if necessary, appropriate force, Picard replied. But I will not condemn people for what they might do. I will not repeat the mistakes of Khan by treating human advancement as a crime. Human advancement? Gulhaver's sneer was palpable. You mean genetic corruption. The Federation preaches evolution through social progress, not biological mutation. These X-Men prove your hypocrisy. In the conference room, Xavier sat with Counselor Troi, watching the confrontation unfold on a monitor. His expression was haunted. This is what we face in our world every day, he said quietly. Fear. Suspicion. The assumption that difference equals danger. He looked at Troi. Tell me, Counselor, in this enlightened Federation of yours, how many species serve alongside humans in Starfleet? Dozens, Troi said. Vulcans, Andorians, Balians, Betazoids. But they all evolved on different worlds, Xavier interrupted gently. What about humans who evolved differently on Earth itself? Would they be welcomed? Or would they be seen as Khan's children, forever tainted by the sins of the eugenics wars? Troi had no answer. On the bridge, the standoff continued, ships holding position in a delicate balance of mutually assured destruction. And in sickbay, Jean Grey sat up on the biobed, her enhanced hearing picking up the arguments echoing through the ship. She looked at Dr. Crusher with ancient eyes. This is my fault, she whispered. They're going to war because of me. No, Crusher said firmly. They're going to war because they're afraid. And fear makes people do terrible things. She placed a hand on Jean's shoulder. But it also gives us the chance to prove them wrong. The Enterprise's conference room had become a war council of necessity. Picard sat at the head of the table, flanked by Riker and Data. Across from them, Professor Xavier studied the holographic display showing the positions of the 7 scattered X-Men with the focus of a general planning a rescue operation. Scott Summers, Cyclops, is on Starbase 219, Xavier said, his fingers tracing the coordinates. He'll be defensive, protocol-oriented. If your people approach him correctly, he'll cooperate. Aurora Monroe, Storm, materialized on a cargo freighter near the Cardassian border. She's level-headed, but if she feels threatened, she can generate atmospheric disturbances visible from orbit. And the one the Klingon captured? Riker asked. Xavier's expression tightened. Logan. Wolverine. He's complicated. Centuries old, though he doesn't look it. His healing factor makes him virtually immortal. The adamantium bonded to his skeleton makes him a living weapon. And his temper makes him dangerous when cornered. The Klingons seem eager to recruit him, Picard observed. They would be. Xavier's tone carried layers of old pain. Logan has spent lifetimes being used as a weapon by governments, organizations, men who saw only his capacity for violence. The Klingon offering him a warrior's honor might actually appeal to him more than Starfleet's regulations. Worf's voice came through the comm system. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Corvette Station. General Clag wishes to speak with you directly. On screen, Mr. Worf. The view screen shifted to show Clag's throne room aboard his bird of prey. The Klingon general sat with casual authority, and beside him, restrained by energy bonds but visibly unbroken, stood Logan. Picard's first impression was of a man forged in fire. Logan was shorter than expected, but compact with predatory muscle. His hair was wild, his beard unkempt, and his eyes held the weight of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall. Blood stained his strange yellow and blue uniform, but he showed no sign of injury. "Captain Picard?" Clag rumbled. "I propose an exchange of information. You have the telepath who claims to lead these warriors. I have the warrior himself. Perhaps it is time we spoke plainly about what is to be done." "You mean to claim him?" Picard said flatly. "I mean to offer him a choice." Clag stood, walking around Logan like a predator circling prey, except Logan's eyes tracked him with equal menace. "Your Federation has laws against genetic enhancement, yes? This Logan is enhanced beyond any human standard. By your own principles, he is illegal. The X-Men are not enhanced." Xavier interjected, leaning forward. "They are naturally evolved." "A convenient distinction," Clag interrupted. "One I suspect Starfleet Command will debate for years while these warriors rot in holding cells, studied like specimens." He placed a heavy hand on Logan's shoulder. The restraints deactivated with a gesture. Logan rolled his shoulders, and with a sound like blades unsheathing, 3 gleaming metal claws extended from between each of his knuckles. The room fell silent. "These claws cut through my bulkheads like they were paper," Clag said with something approaching admiration. "His healing factor repaired a collapsed lung in 17 seconds. He fought my warriors with a skill that speaks of centuries of combat." The Klingon leaned close to Logan. "Tell them, warrior. Tell them what you told me." Logan's voice was gravel and whiskey. "I told him that I've spent 200 years being hunted, experimented on, and turned into a weapon by people who thought they knew better than me what I should be." His claws retracted with a snick. "I also told him that I don't take orders from anyone except Chuck, and barely from him most days." "Chuck?" Riker asked. "Professor Xavier," Logan clarified, his eyes finding the wheelchair-bound telepath on the screen. "You okay, old man?" "I'm unharmed, Logan," Xavier said, relief evident in his voice. "As is Jean. She's aboard the Enterprise." Something shifted in Logan's expression, concern, perhaps fear. "Jeannie okay?" "Her powers were going haywire when everything went to hell." "She's stable," Picard interjected. "Dr. Crusher is monitoring her condition." Logan studied Picard with predatory intensity. "You're the captain? The one who told Jeannie she wasn't a monster?" His eyes narrowed. "You believe that?" "I do," Picard said without hesitation. "Just as I believe you and your teammates deserve the same rights and protections as any Federation citizen. Even though your own laws say people like us shouldn't exist?" The question hung in the air like a thrown knife. Picard felt every eye in the room on him. His crew waiting for reassurance, Xavier watching to see if this captain truly understood, Logan testing whether pretty words matched conviction. "Our laws prohibit genetic engineering," Picard said carefully. "The deliberate manipulation of human DNA to create superior beings. But you are not engineered. You are evolved. And evolution, Mr. Logan, is not a crime. It is the fundamental right of every living thing." "Pretty speech," Logan said. "But I've heard pretty speeches before, right before the cages came out." Clag laughed, a booming sound. "You see, Picard? This one knows the truth. The Federation speaks of diversity and acceptance, but only for aliens from distant stars. Humans who evolved beyond the baseline? They are Khan's shadow, forever suspect." He turned to Logan. "Among Klingon, you would be celebrated. Your strength, your warrior's heart, your willingness to face death without fear, these are the qualities we honor." "Yeah?" Logan's smile was sharp. "What about my willingness to gut anyone who tries to control me? You honor that too?" Clag's grin widened. "Especially that." Data's voice cut through the tension from his position at the conference table. "Captain, I am detecting transporter signatures. Multiple Federation vessels are arriving. Admiral Necheyev's flagship, the Gorkin, Picard's jaw tightened. Vice Admiral Necheyev was brilliant, ruthless, and had the political authority to override his command decisions if she deemed it necessary. Her arrival meant Starfleet Command was taking direct control of the situation. "General Clegg," Picard said, "I would like to continue this discussion in person. Would you and Mr. Logan beam aboard the Enterprise?" Clegg's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. "To what end?" "To determine whether we are adversaries or allies in protecting these individuals' freedom." Before Clegg could respond, the view screen shifted. Admiral Necheyev's stern face filled the display, and her expression promised complications. "Captain Picard, you are hereby ordered to stand down and transfer all X-Men to my custody for transport to Starfleet Medical. They will undergo full genetic analysis and evaluation before any decisions regarding their status are made. Admiral, with respect, these individuals are not prisoners. They are potential threats to Federation security." Necheyev interrupted. "Captain, I have reviewed Dr. Crusher's reports. These X-Men possess abilities that violate multiple Federation treaties. The girl Jean Grey nearly destroyed a colony. The one called Storm can manipulate planetary weather systems. And according to Klingon reports, this Logan is effectively unkillable." Her voice hardened. "I don't care if they're natural mutations or engineered weapons. Until we understand what they are and what they want, they will be contained." Xavier's voice was ice. "Admiral, I have spent 30 years fighting for mutant rights. I have watched governments imprison, study, and weaponize my students. I will not allow it to happen here." "You don't have a choice, Professor," Necheyev said. "You're not in your universe anymore. Here, you follow Federation law. Then change your law." Xavier shot back. "Because if the Federation's enlightenment doesn't extend to humans who evolved differently, then your utopia is built on a very narrow definition of humanity." The silence that followed was broken by Logan's dark laugh. "This is gonna end real bad," he said to Clegg. "I can smell it." Clegg's hand moved to his disruptor. "Perhaps it is time to choose sides, warrior. The Klingon Empire does not fear evolution. We embrace it." "Logan, don't," Xavier warned. "If you ally with the Klingon, you'll confirm every fear Starfleet has about us. And if I let them lock me in a lab?" Logan's claws extended again. "How many times do I have to learn this lesson, Chuck? The only people who protect us is us." On the Enterprise, Jean Grey suddenly sat upright in sickbay, her eyes wide. "Professor, they're coming." "I can feel them." "Who's coming?" Crusher asked. Jean's voice shook. "Everyone who's ever wanted to use us, control us, or destroy us. And they're not going to stop until we're either dead or caged." The view screen suddenly filled with new signals. Romulan ships closing. Cardassian reinforcements. And emerging from warp at high velocity, a Borg cube. Data's voice was utterly calm as he delivered catastrophe. "Captain, the Borg have arrived. They are hailing us." The Collective's voice echoed through every comm system, mechanical and inevitable. "We are the Borg. The X-Men will be assimilated. Their biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile." Picard rose from his chair, feeling the weight of history pressing down. The eugenics wars. Khan. The Federation's absolute prohibition on genetic enhancement. And now 7 people whose only crime was being born different, caught in the crossfire of empires. "Red alert," he said quietly. "All hands to battle stations." In the conference room, Xavier closed his eyes and reached out across space with his formidable mind. "X-Men," he sent to all his scattered students. "I'm sorry. I brought you to this universe seeking knowledge. Instead, I've put you in a war you didn't choose." From 6 different locations, his students answered. "We chose to follow you, Professor," Cyclops responded from Starbase 219. "We'll face this together." Like always, Storm added from the freighter, lightning already dancing across her fingertips. And from Logan, restrained on a Klingon ship, Just point me at the bad guys, Chuck. I'll do what I do best. Xavier opened his eyes and looked at Picard. Captain, my X-Men are not weapons. But if the alternative is assimilation or imprisonment, they will fight. And when mutants fight... He paused. The collateral damage tends to be significant. Picard met his gaze. Then we'd better make sure it doesn't come to that. Outside, the Borg cube advanced, relentless as gravity. The Borg cube hung in space like a monument to inevitability. Its hull was scarred from 1,000 assimilations, its surface crawling with geometric precision. Against the assembled fleet, Romulan, Cardassian, Klingon, and Federation vessels, it seemed impossibly outmatched. It wasn't. The cube is scanning all vessels, Data reported, his fingers flying across the tactical display. They are specifically targeting biosignatures matching the X-Men genetic profiles. How did the Borg even know about them? Riker demanded. Picard's expression darkened. Because someone told them. Mr. Data, trace all subspace communications from the past 6 hours. Data's pause was infinitesimal but damning. Captain, I am detecting an encoded transmission that originated from the Romulan flagship approximately 4 hours ago. Destination Borg space. On the view screen, Commander Tortha's face remained impassive, but Picard saw the calculation in her eyes. The Romulans had made a devil's bargain, informed the Borg about the X-Men, hoping the Collective would eliminate the threat, while the Empire watched from a safe distance. Except the Borg didn't eliminate threats. They assimilated them. The cube is hailing all vessels, Worf announced. All channels, Picard ordered. The Collective's voice filled the bridge, synthesized from thousands of assimilated voices speaking as one. We are the Borg. 7 human variants possess unique biological characteristics. Genetic mutation enabling telekinesis, telepathy, weather manipulation, accelerated healing, and energy projection. These traits will be assimilated. All vessels will withdraw or be destroyed. General Clagg's face appeared on a secondary screen, his expression savage with anticipation. The Borg want our warriors? Let them try to take them. Captain Picard, I propose a temporary alliance. The Klingon Empire will not surrender anyone to those soulless machines. Nor will the Federation, Picard said. He looked at Xavier, still connected via comm from the conference room. Professor, I need to know, can your X-Men fight the Borg? Xavier's weathered face showed the weight of terrible choices. Captain, my students are powerful, but the Borg adapt. If we engage them, we might win the first confrontation. The second will be exponentially harder. And if the Borg assimilate even one X-Man... He didn't need to finish the thought. A Borg drone with Wolverine's healing factor. A drone with Jean Grey's telekinesis. A drone with Storm's atmospheric control. Each X-Man represented not just one assimilation, but a template for millions of enhanced drones. Then we don't let them get close, Picard said. He opened a channel to all ships. This is Captain Picard to all vessels. Whatever our disagreements, the Borg are a threat to all biological life. I propose we table our disputes and face this enemy together. Silence filled the comm channels for 3 seconds that felt like eternity. Gul Havis spoke first. The Cardassian Union does not flee from threats, Captain. But neither are we fools. We will support your defense, for now. Commander Tortha's smile was poisonous. How noble of you, Picard, to unite us against the very threat my people helped create. Very well. The Romulan Star Empire will honor the temporary alliance. But when this is over, we will have words about the X-Men's disposition. Agreed, Picard said, though he had no intention of surrendering Xavier's students to anyone. The Borg cube began its approach, methodical and unhurried. It didn't need to rush. It had already calculated every tactical variable, predicted every defensive strategy, prepared for every weapon in the assembled fleet's arsenal. It had not, however, prepared for the X-Men. On Starbase 219, Scott Summers stood in the operations center, his distinctive ruby quartz visor reflecting the station's emergency lighting. Commander Ramirez, the station's CO, had initially tried to confine him. That had lasted until Scott demonstrated what his optic blasts could do to reinforce bulkheads. Now, they had an uneasy understanding. "Mr. Summers," Ramirez said, reading a tactical update. "The Enterprise is facing a Borg cube. They're requesting all available support." Scott's jaw tightened. The professor was on that ship. So was Jean. "I can help." "You're not Starfleet." "No, I'm not." Scott turned to face the commander, and even through the visor, his intensity was palpable. "But I've led teams against extinction-level threats since I was 16 years old. I've fought aliens, gods, and tyrants. And I've never abandoned my family." He gestured to the view screen showing the distant battle. "That's my family out there. So you can either help me get to them, or you can try to stop me. Your choice." Ramirez studied him for a long moment, seeing something in Scott's bearing that reminded him of every decorated officer he'd ever served with. The absolute certainty of someone who knew their duty and would die fulfilling it. "We have a runabout prep for emergency deployment," Ramirez said. "I'll have my tactical officer brief you on the controls." Scott allowed himself a tight smile. "Thank you, Commander." "Don't thank me," Ramirez said. "Just make sure whatever you do with those I-beams of yours, you aim them at the Borg." Aboard the cargo freighter Constellation's Pride, Aurora Monroe stood on the bridge, wind whipping through her white hair despite being in an enclosed space. The crew had backed away from her, terrified and awed in equal measure. Captain Tella, a Vulcan merchant, watched with characteristic composure as storm clouds formed inside her own ship. "Fascinating. You are manipulating atmospheric pressure and electromagnetic fields through an unknown mechanism." "I am the mechanism," Storm said, her voice carrying the rumble of distant thunder. "And I need you to take me to the Enterprise. My friends are in danger." "The Borg are present," Pella observed. "Logical self-preservation suggests we flee in the opposite direction." Storm's eyes flashed white with power. "Logic suggests that if the Borg assimilate my teammates, they will gain abilities that make them unstoppable. I can prevent that. Will you help me, or must I commandeer your vessel?" Pella raised an eyebrow. "Commandeering a ship is illegal under Federation law. So is genetic enhancement, apparently," Storm said, her tone sharp. "Yet here I stand, born this way, threatening no one until your civilized galaxy decided I was a weapon to be claimed." Lightning crackled between her fingers. "I have spent my life being worshipped as a goddess and hunted as a demon. I am tired of being defined by others' fear. Today I define myself." The Vulcan studied her for a moment, then made her decision. "Course laid in for the Enterprise. Estimated arrival, 17 minutes. She paused. "For what it is worth, Miss Monroe, your autonomy is admirable." "Thank you, Captain." On Corvette Station, Logan stood facing General Clag in the Klingon's personal quarters. The energy restraints were gone, and Clag had offered him blood wine and a warrior's respect. "You could have a place among us," Clag said, refilling Logan's cup. "The Empire values strength. Your healing factor, your claws, your combat experience, you would rise quickly. Perhaps even earn your own ship, your own house." Logan drank, appreciating the burn. "Tempting. Really. But I got a problem with authority, General. Yours included." "I do not offer authority," Clag corrected. "I offer brotherhood. Warriors who understand that life is battle, and battle is honor." "Yeah, see, that's where you lose me." Logan set down his cup. "I've fought in every major war for the last 200 years. I know what battle looks like, smells like, tastes like. And it ain't honor. It's blood and screaming and doing terrible things because the alternative is worse. Yet you fight. Because someone has to." Logan's claws extended. "But I don't fight for glory or honor or any of that Klingon crap. I fight to protect the people who can't protect themselves." "Like the professor. Like Jeannie." Like every scared kid who got dealt a bad genetic hand and needs someone to stand between them and the mob. Clag's respect deepened. Then you fight for what all true warriors fight for, those who cannot fight for themselves. This is the highest honor. Call it what you want. Logan retracted his claws. Point is, the Borg are coming for my people. So unless you're planning to stop me, I'm heading to the Enterprise. Clag's smile was fierce. Stop you? Warrior, I'm coming with you. He tapped his communicator. Clag to bridge. Set course for the Enterprise, maximum warp. And prepare for battle. Why? Logan asked. This ain't your fight. You said it yourself. Someone has to stand between the weak and the mob. Today, the Borg are the mob. Clag clasped Logan's shoulder. Besides, I wish to see what your claws can do to drone armor. For science. Logan's grin was all teeth. For science. Right. Aboard the Enterprise, the Borg cube closed to weapons range. Its tractor beam lanced out, attempting to lock onto the ship. Picard stood firm in his command chair, memories of his own assimilation, of being Locutus, flooding back with nauseating clarity. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Fire at will. The Enterprise's phasers carved brilliant lines across the cube's hull, followed by photon torpedoes that bloomed like deadly flowers. The Romulan warbids added their disruptors, emerald energy stabbing into the cube. Cardassian ships contributed spiraling orange beams. Even the Klingon, whooping with battle joy, poured fire into the Borg vessel. The cube shields adapted in real time, shimmering green as it absorbed and nullified each weapon frequency. Return fire was precise and devastating, cutting beams that sliced through shields, tractor beams that caught ships and began pulling them toward assimilation ports. In sickbay, Jean Grey clutched her head as she felt the Borg's collective consciousness. Millions of minds screaming in unified silence. The Phoenix stirred, responding to her distress. No, she told it. Not yet. Not unless there's no other choice. Dr. Crusher watched her patient with growing concern. Jean, your neural activity is spiking. They're in my head. Jean gasped. All those minds, all that hunger. They want us. They need us. They think mutant genetics are the missing piece to perfection. Xavier's voice came through her comm badge. Jean, listen to me. You must shield yourself. If the Borg sense the Phoenix. Too late. The cube's sensors detected the anomalous energy signature emanating from Jean Grey. The collective's voice echoed across all channels. Phoenix force detected. Cosmic level power source. Assimilation priority 1. All drones redirected. The cube changed course, no longer interested in the fleet. It wanted Jean Grey. And it would tear through every ship between itself and its prize to get her. The Borg cube's single-minded focus on Jean Grey created a tactical opportunity and a moral crisis simultaneously. Every weapon that had been firing at the fleet redirected toward the Enterprise, cutting beams carving through space with surgical precision. Shields at 60%, Worf reported, his hands dancing across tactical controls. They are concentrating fire on sickbay's location. They can pinpoint her through our shields? Riker asked, incredulous. Data's response was grim. The Phoenix Force generates a unique energy signature that appears to transcend conventional shielding. The Borg have locked onto it like a beacon. In sickbay, Dr. Crusher activated the emergency force fields as the ship shuddered under sustained bombardment. Jean stood, her eyes beginning to glow with barely contained power. I need to go out there, she said. If I surrender myself, maybe they'll stop attacking. Absolutely not, Crusher said firmly. Captain Picard doesn't trade lives, and neither do I. But people are dying. People will die if the Borg get you. Crusher interrupted. Jean, listen to me. I've read your genetic profile. I've seen what the Phoenix Force is capable of in the Professor's descriptions. If the Borg assimilate that power, they won't just threaten one ship or one sector. They'll threaten the entire galaxy. Jean's hands trembled. Then what do I do? I can't control it here. Everything feels wrong. The subspace, the warp fields, the way reality bends in this universe. The Phoenix is stronger here, and I'm weaker. Xavier's mental voice cut through her panic. Jean, you're not weaker. You're different. This universe's physics amplifies psychic energy. I can feel it too. The Phoenix isn't stronger. You're simply not used to the resonance. Professor, I'm scared. If I lose control, then I will help you regain it, Xavier sent with absolute certainty. You are not alone, child. You have never been alone. On the bridge, Picard made a decision. Mr. Data, can we mask Jean Grey's energy signature? Negative, Captain. The Phoenix Force operates on quantum levels our technology cannot dampen. However, Data's positronic brain made connections at superhuman speed. If we could create multiple false signatures matching her energy profile, we might confuse the Borg's targeting sensors. How? Picard demanded. By using Miss Grey herself as a template. If she could project her consciousness into multiple locations simultaneously, creating psychic echoes. You want to turn her into bait, Riker said flatly. I want to turn her into a tactical advantage. Data corrected. The Borg adapt to weapons and shields, but they have limited experience with psychic warfare. Their hive mind is efficient but also vulnerable to certain forms of mental assault. Picard tapped his comm batch. Picard to Professor Xavier. We need your expertise. In the conference room, Xavier listened to Data's proposal. Beside him, Counselor Troi felt the professor's mind working through variables at astonishing speed, not just the tactical considerations, but the psychological impact on Jean, the risk of Phoenix destabilization, the moral weight of using a student as a weapon. It could work, Xavier said slowly. But Jean would need an anchor, someone to keep her grounded while her consciousness fragments across multiple points. Counselor Troi, you're an empath. Could you maintain a psychic link with her? Troi felt a flutter of uncertainty. Her Beta's abilities were formidable, but nothing compared to the raw power Xavier and Jean wielded. I've never attempted anything on this scale. You won't be alone, Xavier assured her. I'll guide you both. Think of it as a bridge. You're the foundation, I'm the architect, and Jean is the structure we're building. The Enterprise lurched violently. Sparks erupted from the ceiling as a Borg cutting beam sliced through the outer hull. Shields at 40%, Worf announced. We cannot sustain this assault much longer. Picard stood. Make it happen. Counselor, Professor, you have 5 minutes to prepare. Mr. Data, coordinate with them. Everyone else, buy us the time we need. The comm crackled with new voices. Enterprise, this is the runabout Yellowstone. Scott Summers' voice cut through the chaos. I'm inbound with limited weapons but a really big laser. Where do you need me? And this is the Constellation's pride, Captain Picard added with Vulcan precision. We are carrying a passenger who wishes to contribute to the battle. Miss Monroe assures me her atmospheric manipulation can function in vacuum if properly applied. All support is welcome, Picard said, hope flickering. Cyclops, target the cube shield emitters. Storm, if you can disrupt their tractor beams. I can create electromagnetic interference. Storm's voice responded, wind already audible in her background. But I'll need to get close. Very close. General Clagg's bird of prey decloaked off the Enterprise's port bow, weapons blazing. Picard! I bring you a warrior with indestructible claws and a very bad attitude. Where should I deposit him? Logan's growl came through clearly. Beam me onto that cube, Captain. I'll carve my way to their main power distribution node. Mr. Logan, that's suicide, Riker objected. Nah. Suicide is something you don't come back from. This is just Tuesday. Logan's dark humor carried the weight of someone who died and revived more times than he could count. Look, these Borg adapt to energy weapons, right? But they ain't ever fought someone who adapts faster than they do. My healing factor versus their assimilation. Let's see who blinks first. Picard exchanged a look with Riker. The plan was insane. It was also their best option. Do it, Picard ordered. But Mr. Logan, if assimilation becomes inevitable, we will destroy the cube with you on it. Fair enough, Logan said. Just make sure you get Jeannie out first. In sickbay, Jean closed her eyes as Counselor Troi sat across from her, taking her hands. Dr. Crusher had cleared the room of all non-essential personnel, leaving just the two of them and a medical team standing by with sedatives if everything went catastrophically wrong. I've never done this before, Jean admitted. Neither have I, Troi said with a slight smile. We'll figure it out together. Xavier's mental presence enveloped them both, warm and steady as a hearth fire. Deanna, Jean, join your minds to mine. Let me show you how this works. The three consciousness merged, and suddenly Troi understood why telepaths spoke of the mind as an ocean. She was drowning in sensation, in thought, in the overwhelming vastness of human experience magnified threefold. But Xavier's discipline held her steady, teaching her in seconds what took Beta's students years to master. Jean, Xavier instructed. Fragment your consciousness into 7 distinct echoes. Each one will carry the Phoenix signature, but none will be you. The Borg will detect multiple targets. Won't that make the Phoenix stronger? Jean asked, fear threading through her thoughts. Yes. Which is why Deanna will anchor you to yourself, and I will maintain the boundaries. Trust us, child. Jean took a mental breath and let go. Her consciousness split like light through a prism. 7 distinct versions of herself appeared across the battlefield, not physical, but psychic projections so powerful they registered on sensors as real entities. Each one blazed with Phoenix fire, each one screamed with cosmic power. The Borg cube immediately detected all 7 signatures. Its targeting systems locked onto all 7 positions. And for the first time in the collective's vast experience, it hesitated. 7 targets detected. Identical energy signatures. Calculating probability of deception, 73%. Recalculating approach vector. That hesitation was all the opening the Allied fleet needed. Scott's optic blast lanced from the runabout, a crimson beam of pure concussive force that punched through the cube's weakened shields and shattered 3 shield emitters. The Borg adapted instantly, reinforcing that section, but it left other areas vulnerable. Storm's freighter dove toward the cube, and Aurora stood at the airlock in an emergency environmental suit. The captain had thought she was mad. She probably was. She opened the airlock to vacuum. Most beings would have died instantly. Storm simply spread her arms and called to the electromagnetic fields that permeated space itself. Solar wind. Cosmic radiation. The invisible currents of charged particles that flowed between stars. She became the storm. Lightning erupted in the void, not from atmosphere but from the fundamental forces of the universe itself. It arced across the cube's hull, disrupting tractor beams, overloading sensor arrays, creating cascading failures across Borg systems. The collective adapted, but adaptation took time. And time was what the Enterprise needed. On the cube itself, Logan materialized in a shower of transporter sparkles, his claws already extended. The Borg drones turned toward him with mechanical precision. Come on then, Logan snarled. Let's dance. The first drone lunged. Logan's claws sheared through its cranial implants, sparking and smoking. The second and third came simultaneously. He was faster, spinning between them, adamantium slicing through metal and flesh with equal ease. The Borg adapted. Drones with reinforced armor appeared. Logan grinned savagely and targeted joints instead, hamstringing them, dismembering them, creating a growing pile of twitching mechanical corpses. But there were thousands of drones. And Logan was just one man. He fought his way deeper into the cube, following Data's transmitted schematics toward the central plexus. His healing factor worked overtime, repairing assimilation tubules that pierced his flesh, purging nanoprobes before they could establish control, keeping him human through sheer biological stubbornness. This, Logan thought as he carved through another wave of drones, is gonna hurt tomorrow. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard watched the battle unfold with the calm of a conductor leading a deadly orchestra. The X-Men were proving their worth, not as weapons, but as individuals using their unique gifts in service of a cause larger than themselves. It was exactly what Xavier had claimed they were. "Captain," Data announced, "the Borg cube is fragmenting its targeting. They are attempting to assimilate all 7 Phoenix signatures simultaneously." "Jean, can you hold?" Picard asked. In sickbay, Jean's body trembled, her eyes blazing gold, hair floating in a psychic wind. Troi gripped her hands tighter, feeling the strain of holding 7 minds in tenuous balance. "I can hold," Jean gasped. "But not for long. Professor." Xavier's mental voice carried warning. "The Phoenix is getting restless. It wants to be real, not just echoes. Jean, you need to collapse the projection soon." 30 seconds, Jean promised. "Give me 30 seconds. 30 seconds to save the galaxy from the Borg getting their hands on the Phoenix Force. 30 seconds to prove the X-Men weren't the threat everyone feared. 30 seconds that felt like eternity. The 30 seconds began like drops of water before a flood. Logan drove his claws into the central plexus of the Borg cube, feeling the vibration of countless systems thrumming beneath his adamantium. Nanoprobes flooded his bloodstream faster than his healing factor could purge them. For 3 agonizing seconds, he felt the collective's consciousness pressing against his own, millions of voices trying to subsume his identity into their unity. "You want my mind?" Logan snarled through gritted teeth, his healing factor burning white-hot as it fought the invasion. "Good luck. I got 200 years of nightmares in here. Choke on them." The collective recoiled. Logan's consciousness was a maze of trauma, regenerated memories that should have been forgotten, psychic scars layered so deep that even the Borg's assimilation protocols couldn't parse them cleanly. His healing factor didn't just repair tissue. It reconstructed neural pathways, creating a moving target that adaptation couldn't lock onto. Subject designation, Wolverine. Assimilation unsuccessful. Neural architecture regenerates faster than nanoprobe integration. Reassessing approach. "Yeah, that's right," Logan growled, his claws finding the main power coupling. "Reassess this." He drove both sets of claws deep and pulled, adamantium shrieking against alien metal. Sparks erupted. Systems began cascading failures. And deep in the cube's core, something critical ruptured. 23 seconds remaining. Scott's runabout weaved between Borg cutting beams with the precision of someone who'd navigated far worse. His hands moved across unfamiliar controls with tactical instinct honed over years of leading the X-Men through impossible situations. "Computer, maximize forward phaser array," he ordered. "Target coordinates data transmitted. Shield emitter cluster 7. The runabout's modest weapons wouldn't normally scratch a Borg cube. But Scott wasn't relying on the phaser's power. He was using it as a designator. His hand moved to his visor, the familiar ruby quartz that had been both prison and weapon his entire adult life. He adjusted the setting, opening the aperture wider than he'd dared in years. "Data, on my mark, drop the runabout's forward shields for 0.7 seconds. Mr. Summers, that will leave you vulnerable." "I know. Do it." Scott stood, braced himself against the runabout's frame, and aimed through the forward viewport at the exact coordinates where his phaser had painted the target. "Mark." The shields dropped. Scott triggered his optic blast. The beam that erupted from his eyes was pure kinetic force, a concentrated column of energy that could shatter mountains. It crossed the distance in a microsecond and struck the exact point where Borg's shields had momentarily weakened to adapt to phaser frequency. The shield emitter exploded. Then the one next to it. Then 3 more in a chain reaction that carved a wound across the cube's surface 20 meters wide. 17 seconds remaining. Storm floated in vacuum, her body wreathed in electromagnetic fire, pulling cosmic forces into patterns that defied conventional physics. She could feel the solar wind, the charged particles streaming from the distant star, the magnetic field lines that webbed through space. In Earth's atmosphere, she was a goddess. Here, in the void, she was something else entirely, a conduit for the fundamental forces that held the universe together. "Ororo to Enterprise," she transmitted, her voice calm despite the impossibility of what she was doing. "I can disrupt their tractor beams, but I need you to trust me with something dangerous." "Define dangerous," Picard responded. "I'm going to create a localized electromagnetic pulse, essentially artificial lightning on a massive scale. It will disable the cube's ability to lock weapons or tractors. It will also disable every unshielded system within 2 kilometers. Including your freighter." "Including my freighter," Storm confirmed. "Captain Picard has already evacuated the crew to escape pods. I'm staying to maintain the storm until you extract me." Picard made the calculation instantly. "Proceed. Enterprise will retrieve you." Storm's eyes blazed pure white. She reached out to the fundamental electromagnetic force and commanded it to obey. Lightning erupted across kilometers of space, not from clouds but from the quantum foam of reality itself. It struck the Borg cube in cascading waves, overloading circuits, frying sensors, creating interference that reduced the collective's tactical efficiency by 37%. 11 seconds remaining. In sickbay, Jean's consciousness was fraying. 7 fragments of herself screamed for reunification, each one pulling harder than the last. The Phoenix Force sensed her weakness and surged, demanding release, promising power, offering to solve everything with cosmic fire. "Jean, collapse the projections," Xavier urged. "Now." "Not yet," Jean gasped. "Logan's still in there. If I pull back now, the Borg will focus everything on the Enterprise." "Jean, I can hold." But she couldn't. The 6th projection shattered, its psychic echo snapping back into her consciousness with whiplash force. Jean screamed. The Phoenix Force blazed brighter, no longer content to be restrained. Counselor Troi felt Jean's mind beginning to fracture under the strain. "Professor, we're losing her." Xavier made a choice. He released his hold on Jean's consciousness, and instead drove his own telepathy into the Borg cube itself. For the first time in the collective's existence, it felt an intruder in its unified mind. Xavier's consciousness exploded through the neural network linking thousands of drones, and what he found there horrified him. These weren't just machines, they were people, enslaved, their individuality stripped away but not quite destroyed. He could feel them screaming in the depths of the hive mind, prisoners in their own bodies. "I see you," Xavier sent to every consciousness trapped in the collective. "I see all of you. And I'm sorry." Telepathic intrusion detected. Source: Charles Xavier. Threat level: critical. All drones redirect to mental suppression. The Borg cube's attention fractured. Half its processing power diverted to defending against Xavier's telepathic assault. The other half struggled to maintain pursuit of Jean's remaining projections. 7 seconds remaining. Admiral Necheyev's flagship, the Gorkon, had been holding position, observing, calculating. Now she made her move. "Fire quantum torpedoes, full spread," she ordered. "Target the wound Cyclops opened." 8 torpedoes launched, each one a small sun of destructive power. They punched through the cube's compromised shields and detonated deep in its infrastructure. Explosions rippled across the hull. Secondary systems failed. The cube's perfect geometry began to crack. Critical damage sustained. Regeneration systems overwhelmed. Adaptation insufficient. Retreat protocol. 5 seconds remaining. Logan felt the cube shudder around him. Walls began collapsing. The power coupling he destroyed was causing cascading failures throughout the vessel. He could stay, ensure the job was done, die in the explosion and wake up in the wreckage hours later. Or he could trust that he'd done enough. "Logan, to anyone listening," he transmitted. "I'm done here. Somebody get me out before this thing falls apart." The transporter beam caught him 3 seconds before his section of the cube imploded. He materialized on the Enterprise's transporter pad, smoking, bleeding from a dozen wounds, covered in Borg technology and his own blood. Chief O'Brien stared at him. "Sir, you're healing. I can see it happening." "Yeah," Logan muttered, his wounds already closing. "I do that. Got a beer?" 3 seconds remaining. Jean collapsed the final projections, pulling her fragmented consciousness back into a single unified whole. The relief was instantaneous and overwhelming. Troi caught her as she sagged forward, both women gasping for breath. Xavier withdrew from the Borg Collective, his mind aching from what he'd witnessed. The voices of the assimilated would haunt his dreams for years. 2 seconds remaining. The Borg cube, critically damaged and unable to adapt fast enough to the coordinated assault from beings it couldn't fully predict, made a calculation. Tactical withdrawal required. X-Men biological distinctiveness noted. Future assimilation attempts will compensate for accelerated healing, telepathic defense, kinetic energy projection, electromagnetic manipulation, Phoenix Force phenomenon. We will return. 1 second remaining. The cube's transwarp conduit opened, a swirling green vortex in space. The massive vessel, trailing debris and sparking systems, began to turn. "They're retreating," Data announced, surprise evident in his voice. The assembled fleet, Federation, Romulan, Cardassian, Klingon, held their fire, too shocked to pursue. The Borg didn't retreat. The Borg assimilated or were destroyed. Retreat implied something the Collective had never shown before: uncertainty. 0 seconds. The countdown ended. The cube vanished into the transwarp conduit, leaving behind scattered debris, disabled drones, and a fleet of ships that had just witnessed 7 individuals fundamentally alter the Borg's tactical calculations. Picard stood slowly, feeling the weight of command settle differently on his shoulders. "Stand down from Red Alert. Begin damage assessment. And someone get me a status report on all X-Men." The responses came quickly. Logan, retrieved, healing, demanding alcohol and asking about Jean. Jean Grey, stable, exhausted, Phoenix Force contained. Scott Summers, runabout intact, returning to Enterprise. Storm, retrieved from vacuum, unharmed, requesting immediate debrief. Rogue, Beast, and the remaining X-Men, still scattered but safe, en route to rendezvous. Xavier, in conference room, conscious but drained. "Captain," Worf said quietly, "we are being hailed by all vessels. They wish to discuss terms." Picard nodded. The battle was over. But the real fight, determining what the Federation would do with 7 people who had just saved them from the Borg while simultaneously terrifying every power in the quadrant, was just beginning. In sickbay, Jean Grey opened her eyes and looked at Counselor Troi. "Did we win?" Troi smiled, exhausted. "You survived. Sometimes that's the same thing. In my experience," Jean said softly, "surviving is just the beginning of the real problems." Outside, Admiral Necheyev's face appeared on the view screen, her expression unreadable. "Captain Picard," she said, "we need to talk about what happens next." And in the wreckage of disabled Borg drones, nanoprobes continued their relentless work, analyzing samples of X-Men DNA, cataloging their capabilities, preparing for the Collective's inevitable return. The Borg had retreated. But they had also learned. 3 weeks into the Enterprise's deep space mission, an uneasy equilibrium had formed. The X-Men had been assigned guest quarters on Deck 8, where they lived under what Starfleet officially called protective supervision, and what Logan called house arrest with better food. Dr. Hank McCoy, Beast, had finally arrived via diplomatic courier and immediately sequestered himself in the ship's astrophysics laboratory with Data. The 2 scientific minds had formed an instant rapport, their conversations a rapid-fire exchange of quantum mechanics and dimensional theory that left even Geordi LaForge struggling to follow. Rogue had come aboard quietly, keeping to herself, terrified of accidentally absorbing someone's consciousness in this strange new universe. Guinan, the Enterprise's enigmatic bartender, had taken particular interest in her, recognizing another soul burdened by unwanted gifts. But it was the morning of day 22 that everything changed. Jean Grey woke screaming. The sound echoed through 3 decks, a psychic wail that made every telepath and empath within range clutch their heads in sympathetic agony. Counselor Troi jerked awake in her quarters, gasping. In 10 forward, Guinan's glass shattered in her hand. On the bridge, the night shift officer monitoring ship's status watched helplessly as every sensor panel flickered with interference. And in Jean's quarters, the Phoenix Force erupted. Golden fire engulfed the room, not burning but transforming. Metal walls rippled like water. The very fabric of reality bent around her, subspace and normal space bleeding together in impossible geometries. Jean floated 3 feet above her bed, her hair a corona of flame, her eyes pure white light. "Jean!" Xavier's mental voice cut through the chaos, but for the first time, his telepathy couldn't reach her. The Phoenix had fully awakened. Scott burst through her door, having overridden the lock with his optic blast, and froze. The woman he loved was there, somewhere inside that cosmic inferno, but he couldn't reach her. "Jean!" he shouted. "Fight it! I know you're still in there." The Phoenix turned its gaze on him, and Scott felt the weight of cosmic attention like gravity trying to crush his soul. But he didn't look away. He never looked away from Jean. "That's right," he said, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming danger. "It's me. Scott. The guy who's loved you since we were teenagers. The guy who knows you're stronger than any force in the universe because you choose to be." For a heartbeat, something human flickered in those burning eyes. Then the ship lurched violently. On the bridge, Picard gripped his command chair as red alert klaxons screamed. "Report! The Phoenix Force is destabilizing subspace around the ship," Data announced, his fingers flying across his console. "I am detecting spatial anomalies forming throughout the Enterprise. Gravity is fluctuating. Several sections are experiencing localized temporal distortions. Can we contain it?" Picard demanded. "Negative, Captain. The Phoenix operates on a level beyond our technology. If Miss Grey loses control completely, the energy release could create a subspace rupture that consumes the entire sector." Worf's tactical board lit up with new contacts. "Captain, multiple vessels dropping out of warp. Romulan, Cardassian and—" He paused, disbelief in his voice. 3 Borg cubes. The view screen split to show the nightmare scenario. The Romulans and Cardassians had been tracking the Enterprise, waiting for exactly this moment, proof that the X-Men were too dangerous. And the Borg, somehow detecting the Phoenix Force's awakening across light years, had come to claim their prize. Picard's mind raced through options, discarding each as inadequate. They couldn't fight 3 Borg cubes. They couldn't outrun them with subspace destabilizing. And they couldn't rely on the Phoenix to save them. It was the problem, not the solution. Unless... "Mr. Data, contact Professor Xavier. Ask him if there's any way to communicate with the Phoenix Force directly." In Jean's quarters, Xavier had arrived despite the danger, his wheelchair somehow maintaining stability in the fluctuating gravity. He reached out not to Jean's mind, that was beyond him now, but to the cosmic entity wearing her like a garment. "Phoenix," he sent, projecting his thoughts with every ounce of telepathic power he possessed. "I know you can hear me. I know you're ancient and powerful, and you care nothing for our mortal concerns. But the woman you're using, Jean Grey, she matters. She's my student. My friend. And she would never forgive herself if she became a weapon of destruction." The Phoenix's attention turned to him, vast and terrible. Xavier felt his mind beginning to burn under that gaze, but he held firm. "You brought her to this universe," the Phoenix's voice was 1,000 stars dying. "You exposed her to forces she couldn't control. This is your doing, Charles Xavier." "Yes," Xavier admitted. "It is. I made a mistake, and Jean is paying for it. But punishing her by taking her over, that's beneath a force of creation and rebirth. You're better than that." "Better?" The Phoenix laughed, and reality shuddered. I am neither good nor evil. I simply am. Then be something that matters, Scott said, his hand reaching toward Jean's burning form. Be the force that helped Jean save lives. Be the power that chose to protect instead of destroy. Be better because SHE makes you better. The Phoenix hesitated. In that cosmic consciousness, something shifted. The boy speaks truth, it acknowledged. Jean Grey's will is formidable. She fights me even now, from within. She would rather die than let me harm innocents. Then honor that, Xavier urged. Let her go. Or at least let her share control. You don't need to be her prisoner or her master, you could be her partner. On the bridge, the Borg cubes had begun their approach, weapons powering up. The lead cube's message was simple and terrifying. Phoenix force detected. Optimal assimilation window identified. All resistance is futile. Captain, the Borg are preparing to fire on our position, Worf reported. Shields up. Evasive maneuvers. Picard turned to the comm. Professor, we're out of time. Whatever you're going to do. The Enterprise shuddered as the first Borg cutting beam sliced past, missing by meters. Then the second cube fired, and the third, coordinating their assault with mechanical precision. In Jean's quarters, Scott made his choice. He stepped directly into the Phoenix fire. It should have consumed him instantly. Instead, Jean's love for him, the bond they'd forged over years of fighting side by side, acted as a shield. Scott felt the heat, felt the cosmic power trying to burn him to atoms, but Jean's will protected him. I'm here, he said, taking another step. I'm right here, Jean. Come back to me. Inside the Phoenix, Jean Grey heard him. Felt him. Knew that Scott Summers had walked into certain death because he believed in her. He's an idiot, she thought. He's your idiot, the Phoenix replied, and there was something almost like amusement in its voice. Jean gathered every shred of her will, every lesson Xavier had taught her, every moment of discipline she'd ever practiced. She reached deep into the cosmic fire and found the core of who she was. I am Jean Grey, she declared. And I am not your puppet. No, the Phoenix agreed. You are my host. There is a difference. The golden fire contracted, condensing, focusing. Jean's eyes flickered between white light and human green. And slowly, impossibly, she began to descend to the floor. Scott caught her as she landed, his arms around her trembling form. I've got you, he whispered. I know, Jean said, her voice her own again. You always do. But the Phoenix hadn't left. Jean could feel it, coiled in the depths of her soul, waiting. They'd reached an understanding. She would share space with the cosmic force, and it would lend her power when needed. But control remained hers. For now. On the bridge, Data's console erupted with alerts. Captain, the subspace distortions are stabilizing. The Phoenix force energy signature is changing. It appears to be consolidating rather than expanding. And the Borg? Picard asked. They have stopped their attack, Worf reported, confusion evident. They are scanning us, but weapons are no longer locked. The lead Borg cube transmitted. Phoenix Force has achieved stable symbiosis with host. Assimilation probability reduced to 12%. This entity is no longer designated optimal target. Withdrawal initiated. The three cubes turned and, to the astonishment of everyone watching, opened transwarp conduits and departed. The Borg had calculated that a Jean Grey in control of the Phoenix was too dangerous to attempt assimilating. They'd rather retreat than risk the cosmic backlash. They're leaving, Riker said, disbelief in his voice. The Borg are actually leaving. The Romulan and Cardassian ships, seeing the Borg withdrawal, hesitated. Without the Collective's assault to hide behind, directly attacking the Enterprise meant open war with the Federation. Commander Tortha's face appeared on the view screen. Captain Picard, it appears the situation has resolved itself. The Romulan Star Empire will continue monitoring. But we acknowledge that for now, you have matters under control. The transmission cut before Picard could respond. In sickbay, Dr. Crusher ran every scan she could conceive of on Jean Grey. The young woman sat on a bed, exhausted but whole, Scott refusing to leave her side. Your neural patterns show integration with an energy source I can't fully identify, Crusher said. But it's stable. Somehow, you've achieved equilibrium with the Phoenix Force. It's not equilibrium, Jean said quietly. It's more like coexistence. The Phoenix is still there, still powerful, still dangerous. But we've agreed to work together instead of fighting for control. How long will that agreement last? Crusher asked. Jean met her eyes. I don't know. But for now, it's enough. In the astrophysics lab, Beast and Data had witnessed the entire crisis through sensor readings. Beast's blue-furred hands trembled as he reviewed the data. Extraordinary, he murmured. Jean achieved something I'd theorized but never seen proven. Voluntary symbiosis with a cosmic force-level entity. The Phoenix chose partnership over dominance. Or calculated that partnership served its purposes better. Data observed. Either way, the outcome is preferable to the alternatives. Indeed. Beast agreed. Though I suspect this is merely a temporary reprieve. The Phoenix Force is, by nature, transformative. It will seek expression eventually. Then we must find a way to return the X-Men to their universe before that occurs. Data said. I believe I am close to a breakthrough in replicating the dimensional variants that brought them here. How close? Beast asked. Data's pause was infinitesimal but telling. Within 2 weeks, I should have a working theory. Within 2 months, we might attempt the actual transfer. 2 months. It seemed simultaneously forever and not nearly enough time. In his ready room, Picard sat across from Xavier, both men looking older than they had 3 weeks ago. Your gene is remarkable, Picard said. To negotiate with a cosmic entity and emerge with her identity intact, that requires strength I can scarcely fathom. Jean has always been strong, Xavier said. But strength has its limits. The Phoenix will eventually demand more than she can safely give. We need to go home, Captain. Data is working on it. But Professor, I must ask, even if you return to your universe, what's to stop this from happening again? The Phoenix is part of Jean now. Xavier's expression was haunted. Nothing. Which is why I've spent years teaching her control, surrounding her with people who can help contain her if necessary, building a school where young mutants learn that power without discipline is destruction. He looked directly at Picard. Captain, whether we're in your universe or mine, the struggle is the same, teaching people to be more than their gifts, to choose compassion over power. A struggle the Federation should understand, Picard said. We've built our entire civilization on that principle. Then why does your civilization fear my X-Men so much? The question hung in the air, unanswered because both men knew the truth. Fear of the other was universal, regardless of how enlightened a society claimed to be. The Enterprise sailed on through uncharted space, carrying 7 people who had changed the galaxy simply by existing in it. And in the deepest reaches of space, the Borg Collective analyzed their encounter, updating their protocols, preparing for the day when Jean Grey could no longer control the Phoenix Force. Preparation complete. Future assimilation attempts will account for Phoenix Force variable. We will return. We will adapt. We will prevail. The breakthrough came on day 47, in the quiet hours of ship's night when most of the Enterprise crew slept. Data and Beast had been working for 16 consecutive hours in the astrophysics lab, their combined intellects pushing the boundaries of dimensional theory. Around them, holographic displays showed mathematical models so complex they resembled abstract art, equations that described the fabric between universes. I believe I've isolated the variable, Data announced, his positronic brain processing terabytes of data simultaneously. The subspace rupture that brought the X-Men to our universe created a quantum resonance pattern. If we can recreate that pattern and amplify it through the deflector dish, we should be able to open a controlled gateway. Beast leaned forward, his brilliant mind immediately seeing both the potential and the problem. The energy requirements would be astronomical. The Enterprise's warp core alone couldn't generate sufficient power. Correct. Data agreed. We would need additional power sources. I calculate we would require the combined output of at least 3 Galaxy-class starships running their warp cores at maximum capacity simultaneously. 3 starships? Beast's voice dropped. Data, Starfleet will never authorize that. The political capital alone, Admiral Necheyev has been looking for any excuse to take custody of us. If we ask for this level of resources, she'll demand we submit to permanent Federation oversight in exchange. Data finished. I am aware of the dilemma. Beast slumped in his chair, despair creeping into his voice. Then we're trapped here. The very people who fear us most control the only means of our escape. Data's golden eyes studied his colleague. Dr. McCoy, I have observed that you consistently refer to yourselves as trapped or prisoners. Yet in my 47 days of interaction with the X-Men, I have witnessed compassion, sacrifice, and moral courage that exceeds many Starfleet officers I have served with. Why do you persist in viewing yourselves as threats? Beast was quiet for a long moment. Because, Data, we've lived our entire lives being told we are. Even when we save lives, even when we sacrifice everything for a world that hates us, we're still mutants first, and people second. He gestured to his blue fur, his bestial appearance. I was once a brilliant human scientist. Now I'm a brilliant mutant scientist. The adjective changed. Everything else stayed the same. But to the world, that adjective is all that matters. That is profoundly illogical. Data observed. Yes. Beast agreed with a sad smile. Yes, it is. The comm system chirped. Bridge to Astrophysics Lab. We're detecting an anomaly at bearing 317 Mark 22. Unknown vessel emerging from what appears to be a temporal rift. Data and Beast exchanged glances and rushed to the bridge. The view screen showed something impossible, a ship that seemed to exist in multiple time periods simultaneously. Its hull flickered between solid and translucent, its very structure defying conventional physics. And emblazoned on its side was a symbol that made every Federation officer on the bridge tense. The Romulan Star Empire crest, but wrong somehow, altered in ways that suggested it came from a different timeline. Hailing frequencies open, Worf announced. The figure that appeared on screen made Picard's blood run cold. It was Commander Torith, but aged by decades, scarred by battles that hadn't happened yet, wearing an expression of desperate urgency that no Romulan ever showed outsiders. Captain Picard? She said, her voice rough with time and trauma. I am Commander Torith from 32 years in your future. And I have come to warn you, do not send the X-Men home. The bridge fell silent. Explain, Picard demanded. The future Torith's image flickered, the temporal rift destabilizing. In my timeline you succeeded. Data perfected the dimensional gateway. The X-Men returned to their universe. And without them, the Federation fell. That's impossible, Riker said. How could 7 individuals? 2 years after they left, the Borg returned with a new strategy. Future Torith interrupted. They'd studied the X-Men, learned from them, developed countermeasures for conventional Federation tactics. Without Jean Grey's Phoenix Force, without Storm's ability to disrupt their systems, without Wolverine's capacity to fight them drone to drone. She paused, pain evident. The Borg assimilated Earth. Then Vulcan. Then Romulus. The alliance that formed to stop them came too late. Xavier's voice came through the comm. Commander, are you suggesting the X-Men are necessary for this timeline's survival? I'm suggesting that your presence here changed everything. Future Torith replied. You proved that evolution wasn't something to fear but something to embrace. The X-Men's integration into Federation society, however reluctant, led to breakthroughs in biogenics, telepathic defense networks, and adaptive combat strategies that became crucial in the wars to come. Wars? Picard asked quietly. Plural? Future Torith's expression grew haunted. The Borg were only the beginning. There are threats coming, Captain. Threats that require exactly the kind of thinking the X-Men represent: adaptation, evolution, the willingness to be more than what you were born to be. The temporal rift pulsed, growing unstable. Future Tortha's image began to fragment. "I don't have much time," she said urgently. "Captain, I know what I'm asking. I know the X-Men want to go home. But if you send them back, millions die. Billions. The choice is yours, but make it knowing the consequences." "Wait," Picard called out. "How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know this isn't a Romulan deception?" Future Taurus smiled sadly. "You don't. You never do. Welcome to command, Captain. Sometimes you have to choose between bad options and worse ones." The image flickered one last time. "For what it's worth, in my timeline, you made the right choice. I hope you do again." The transmission ended. The temporal rift collapsed, and the Enterprise bridge was left in shocked silence. "Captain," Data said carefully, "I should note that temporal mechanics are inherently unpredictable. Commander Tortha's timeline may represent only one possible future among infinite variations. But it's a possible future," Picard said. "One where the X-Men's presence makes a difference between survival and extinction." In the conference room, Picard convened an emergency meeting. The X-Men sat on one side of the table, his senior staff on the other. Between them lay an impossible choice. "The temporal mechanics are clear," Data explained. "If we send you home, we eliminate the timeline Commander Torth came from. Whether that creates a better or worse future is impossible to predict." "But you're not suggesting we stay," Jean said, though her voice carried uncertainty. "Are you?" Picard looked at each X-Man in turn. "I'm suggesting that you deserve to know the full situation before making your choice. Dr. McCoy, you said the energy requirements make the gateway impossible to create. That's not entirely accurate." Beast's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I've been in communication with Starfleet Command," Picard said. "Admiral Necheyev is willing to authorize the resources needed for your return. 3 Galaxy-class starships, full support, whatever it takes." "What's the price?" Logan asked, because he knew there was always a price. "You submit to genetic testing before you leave," Picard said. "Full documentation of your abilities, tissue samples, complete medical profiles. Starfleet's official reason is to ensure no dangerous pathogens cross dimensional barriers. The real reason is they want to study you, to understand if human mutation could occur naturally in this universe. They want to see if they can recreate us," Scott said flatly. "They want to prepare," Picard corrected, "in case human mutation does emerge naturally here. To have protocols, understanding, ways to integrate mutants into society rather than fear them." Xavier's voice was heavy. "And if we refuse? Then you stay," Picard said. "Aboard the Enterprise, under my protection, but also under Federation supervision. Limited freedom. Constant monitoring. Never truly part of this society, but also never able to leave it." Storm stood abruptly, lightning crackling in her eyes. "So our choices are, become laboratory specimens before we leave, or remain prisoners if we stay. This is your enlightened Federation. This is reality," Picard said quietly. "I wish I could offer you better options. But I can't." Rogue, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "What would you do, Captain? If you were in our position?" Picard met her eyes. "I would ask myself what serves the greater good. Not just my good, not just my team's good, but the good of everyone my choices affect." He paused. "But I would also remember that I am not required to sacrifice my dignity for others' comfort. Some prices are too high, even for noble causes." The X-Men looked at each other, a lifetime of shared experiences passing between them in glances. "We need to vote," Scott said. "Team decision." "Like always." Xavier nodded. "All in favor of accepting Starfleet's terms and going home, regardless of the genetic testing requirement?" Beast raised his hand immediately. I want to go home. I want to see my lab, my books, my world. I'll endure the tests if it means sleeping in my own bed again. Rogue raised her hand next. I am tired of being scared in a universe that don't understand me. At least back home, I know the rules. The others remained still. All in favor of staying, Xavier said quietly. Storm raised her hand. I will not be studied like an animal. I have spent my life being worshipped or hunted. I will not add dissected to that list. Jean raised hers. The Phoenix is barely stable here. If we cross dimensions again, it might destabilize completely. I won't risk millions of lives because I want to go home. Scott raised his hand, though the gesture clearly pained him. Where Jean goes, I go. Always. Logan was last. Hell with it. I'm staying. Someone's gotta keep you Boy Scouts from getting soft. 3 to stay. 2 to go. Xavier's vote would break the tie. The professor closed his eyes. In his mind, he could see his school, the mansion in Westchester, the students who depended on him, the world he'd spent 30 years trying to save. He could see it all, and he could see it surviving without him. But he could also see the future Commander Torith described. The Borg consuming world after world, the Federation falling because it lacked the one thing the X-Men represented, the willingness to evolve. I vote that we stay, Xavier said, and felt a piece of his heart break as he said it. Beast Rogue, I won't force you to remain. If Starfleet will allow 2 of you to return while the rest of us stay. No, Beast said firmly. We're a team. We stay together. Rogue nodded, tears in her eyes. I guess I'm stuck with you fools. Picard felt the weight of what they'd just chosen. You understand what you're giving up? Your world, your lives, everything you knew? Captain, Xavier said with quiet dignity. We're mutants. We've been giving up things our entire lives. At least this time, we're choosing what we surrender and why. The conference room fell silent, the magnitude of the decision settling over everyone present. In the future that Commander Torith came from, the X-Men stayed. They integrated into Federation society, fought in its wars, taught its people that evolution wasn't something to fear. In this future, the one being written now, the same thing would happen. But this time, they chose it. 6 months later, the USS Enterprise orbited a newly discovered Class M planet in the Calandra sector. The away team stood on a verdant hillside, watching as construction drones laid the foundation for something unprecedented in Federation history. Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Dimensional Branch. I still think Xavier's Institute for Interdimensional Mutation Studies sounded more professional, Beast said, reviewing the architectural plans on a PDD. His blue fur ruffled in the alien wind. It sounded like a prison, Storm countered, her white hair flowing as she instinctively adjusted the planet's weather patterns to provide optimal construction conditions. This is a school, not a laboratory. Captain Picard stood with them, watching the dream take physical form. 6 months of negotiations, committees, and political maneuvering had led to this moment. The Federation officially recognizing the X-Men not as threats to be contained, but as teachers with something vital to offer. It hadn't been easy. Admiral Necheyev had fought the proposal at every level, arguing that establishing a school for human mutants would undermine centuries of policy against genetic enhancement. The Romulan Empire had protested, claiming it was a military installation disguised as an educational facility. The Cardassians demanded observer status. Even the Vulcan Science Academy had raised logical objections about encouraging genetic deviation from baseline human norms. But Picard had persevered, supported by unexpected allies. General Clag had appeared before the Federation Council, arguing that the Klingon Empire had survived for millennia by honoring warriors regardless of their origin. The X-Men have proven their worth in blood, he declared. Only cowards fear evolution. Guinan had testified about the nature of change, speaking with the authority of someone who'd witnessed civilizations rise and fall across centuries. Every species reaches a point where they must decide whether difference is threat or opportunity. The Federation's choice here will define it for generations. Even the Borg's behavior had inadvertently helped. The fact that the Collective had twice retreated from Jean Grey suggested that human mutation might represent a defensive advantage against the galaxy's greatest threat. In the end, the Federation Council had voted 37 to 28 to approve the school, with 15 abstentions. It was hardly a ringing endorsement, but it was permission. The first students arrive next week, Xavier said, his wheelchair hovering beside Picard on the hillside. 17 human children from across Federation space, all exhibiting genetic mutations. Telepathy, telekinesis, enhanced strength, sensory perception beyond baseline human norms. Mutants born in this universe? Picard asked, surprised. Rare, but not non-existent. Beast confirmed. Dr. Crusher's research suggests that human mutation has always occurred here, just at much lower frequencies than in our reality. These children have been hidden, suppressed, medicated to appear normal. Now they'll have a place to learn what they are. And what they can become. Jean added. She stood with Scott, their hands intertwined, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. The Phoenix Force stirred within her, content for now, a sleeping giant that might never fully wake. That's what the professor taught us. Mutation is a gift, not a curse. But only if you have people who help you understand it. Logan leaned against a tree, arms crossed, his typical scowl in place. But Picard had learned to read the subtle signs of the man's moods. Logan was satisfied, in his own gruff way. You going to teach, Logan? Picard asked. Hell no, Logan grunted. I'm security. Someone's gotta make sure nobody tries to hurt these kids. His claws extended briefly. And I'm real good at discouraging people. Rogue stood apart from the group, as she often did, maintaining distance even from those she cared about. Her power, absorbing others' life force and abilities through touch, made intimacy dangerous. But she'd found unexpected friendship with Data, who couldn't be harmed by her absorption abilities. Avi'd been thinking, Rogue said quietly. What that future Taurus said, about us changing the timeline just by being here. What if she was wrong? What if we don't make a difference? Then we fail, Xavier said simply. But we fail trying to build something better than fear. That's all any of us can do, Rogue. Try. Counselor Troi approached the group, accompanied by a Starfleet officer Picard recognized, Lieutenant Commander Nella Darren, one of Starfleet's experts in cultural integration. Captain, Darren said. The first Federation observers arrive tomorrow. Vulcan Science Academy, Beta's Telepathic Institute, and representatives from 17 member worlds. They want to ensure the school meets Federation educational standards. They want to ensure we're not building an army. Storm said dryly. That too, Darren admitted. But Professor Xavier, several of them are genuinely interested in your pedagogical methods. The Betasids in particular are fascinated by your approach to teaching telepathic discipline. Xavier smiled. Then we'll show them. Transparency is our best defense against fear. As the sun set fully, the construction drones powered down for the night. The foundation was laid. Tomorrow, walls would rise. Within weeks, the school would open its doors. And somewhere in Federation space, 17 children with powers they didn't understand would learn that they weren't alone. Picard's comm badge chirped. Enterprise to Captain Picard. We're receiving a Priority 1 transmission from Starfleet Command. Picard exchanged glances with his crew. Priority 1 meant crisis. Patch it through. Admiral Necheyev's face appeared on Picard's PADD, her expression grim. Captain, we have a situation. 3 hours ago, a Borg cube entered Federation space on a direct course for Earth. It's not attempting to assimilate, it's transmitting a message. For you specifically. Picard's blood ran cold. What message? Necheyev's voice was tight. It says we are the Borg. We have adapted. We have evolved. We wish to negotiate with Captain Picard and the X-Men designated Jean Grey. Resistance is no longer relevant. Understanding is required. The group stood frozen. The Borg didn't negotiate. They assimilated. The very concept of the collective seeking dialogue was unthinkable. Unless they'd encountered something that changed them. Jean's eyes flickered gold briefly. They learned from us, she whispered. When I held the Phoenix, when the professor touched their hive mind, when Logan fought them drone to drone, we showed them something they'd never experienced. Individual will strong enough to resist the collective. And now they want to understand it. Xavier finished. Because understanding might be the key to their evolution. Picard looked at the half-built school, then at the X-Men who'd given up everything to remain in this universe. 6 months ago, they'd been refugees. Now they were teachers, defenders, and possibly the key to changing the Borg's fundamental nature. Number 1. Picard said into his comm badge. Prepare the Enterprise for departure. We're returning to Earth. Captain, Necheyev said. The Federation Council is divided on how to handle this. Some want to destroy the cube before it reaches Earth. Others want to hear what it has to say. And you, Admiral? Picard asked. Necheyev was silent for a moment. 6 months ago, I would have said destroy it. But I've watched the X-Men. I've seen what they've built here, how they've changed people's minds about mutation, about evolution, about the possibility of coexistence between different kinds of beings. She paused. If they can teach us that human mutation isn't something to fear, maybe they can teach the Borg that assimilation isn't the only path to perfection. Or maybe they'll assimilate us all and everything we've built dies. Logan said bluntly. Yes. Necheyev agreed. That's also possible. Which is why I'm leaving the decision to you, Captain. You've spent 6 months with the X-Men. You know them better than anyone. Can they do this? Can they negotiate with the Borg and survive? Picard looked at each X-Man in turn. Scott, the tactical leader who'd walked into Phoenix fire for the woman he loved. Storm, the goddess who'd learned humility without losing her power. Beast, the brilliant scientist in a monster's body. Rogue, the woman who couldn't touch but still offered connection. Logan, the immortal warrior who'd chosen to protect children instead of seeking endless battles. Jean, who'd made peace with cosmic fire. And Xavier, who'd sacrificed his world because he believed evolution was worth fighting for. Admiral, Picard said quietly. I believe they can do anything they set their minds to. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what happens when they succeed. Then I suppose we're about to find out, Necheyev said. Enterprise, you have clearance to return to Earth. And Captain, the entire Federation will be watching. Don't fail. The transmission ended. Xavier looked at Picard with those ancient, knowing eyes. Captain, you've given us a chance to prove that mutation, evolution, is the answer to the galaxy's greatest challenges. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Professor, Picard said. If this goes wrong. It won't, Jean interrupted, confidence in her voice. The Borg wanted to assimilate the Phoenix because they thought it was power. Now they're learning that real power isn't about domination. It's about choice. The Enterprise crew and the X-Men beamed up together, leaving behind the half-built school and the promise it represented. In orbit, the Enterprise turned toward Earth, toward the waiting Borg cube, toward a confrontation that would define whether evolution meant conflict or cooperation. And on the planet below, construction drones resumed their work, building a school for children who would inherit whatever future was forged in the days ahead. The X-Men had emerged in Star Trek's universe by accident. They remained by choice. And now, they would discover if that choice could save 2 civilizations, or doom them both. #conclusion. The Federation had been built on a vision. That diversity was strength, that infinite combinations created infinite possibilities, that beings from 1,000 worlds could unite around shared principles rather than shared biology. But that vision had limits. Genetic enhancement was forbidden. Human mutation was feared. The shadow of Khan Noonien Singh stretched across centuries, a reminder of what happened when humanity tried to evolve too quickly. The X-Men shattered those limits simply by existing. They proved that evolution didn't require laboratories or hubris. Sometimes it simply happened, nature's answer to challenges no one had anticipated. They demonstrated that power without ethics was tyranny, but power with purpose could reshape the galaxy. Most importantly, they taught the Federation that its greatest enemy wasn't genetic mutation or technological advancement. It was fear itself. As the Enterprise approached Earth, sensors detected the Borg cube waiting in orbit, neither attacking nor retreating. The Collective had learned something from its encounters with the X-Men, that assimilation wasn't the only path to perfection, that individuality might hold answers that unity couldn't provide. Whether that lesson would lead to peace or merely more sophisticated conflict remained to be seen. But on a distant planet in the Calandra sector, 17 children with powers they didn't understand would soon arrive at a school that promised them something revolutionary: acceptance. Xavier's dream had crossed dimensional barriers. And in this universe, it would either flourish or burn. The choice, as always, belonged to those brave enough to make it. Live long and prosper. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Thank you for watching.